Elena Marsh had driven 4 hours north with a manila folder on the passenger seat and a demolition timeline in her head. She didn't need to like the building. She needed to measure it, photograph it, confirm the site access, and be back in Burlington by dark. Halcyon House sat at the top of a gravel lane off Route 9, a wide mid-century stone building with a sloped roof and tall windows that still caught the January light cleanly. The Arts Council had run it for 30 years before the funding dried up. Now it belonged to a holding company that belonged to her firm, and her firm had a buyer who wanted the ridge cleared by spring. Straightforward. She'd done harder ones. She parked in the lot, noted the condition of the eaves, better than she'd expected, and began walking the perimeter with her phone out. She was halfway down the back slope when she heard the door to the maintenance shed open and a man came out into the cold. He was younger than she'd assumed the caretaker would be. Late 20s, maybe 30. Work boots, canvas jacket, a smear of grease on the back of his left hand that he hadn't noticed or didn't care about. He looked at her the way people in small towns look at strangers in good coats, not unfriendly, but taking a clear measure. "Ms. Marsh," he said. "Cal Morrow. I got your firm's message last week." He shook her hand once, solid, and didn't linger over it. She asked about the roof, the basement drainage, the electrical panel, and he answered everything directly, no fumbling, no hedging. He walked her through the back of the building from memory, where the original drainage had been redirected in the east wing, why the stone facing on the north wall had been repointed and what the winter exposure did to the foundation if you didn't keep the gutters clear. He spoke the way people speak when they know a place the way they know their own kitchen. Which she noted, and filed away, and did not think much about yet. The tour took 40 minutes. At the end of it she stood in the front lot again, satisfied she had what she needed, and said she'd be in touch about the timeline. Then she drove out. The lane curved down the back side of the ridge, narrow, packed with ice under a thin skim of fresh powder she hadn't noticed on the way in. Her rental car made it 40 yards before the rear wheels stepped sideways and she was suddenly broadside against a snowbank, engine running, going nowhere. She tried twice to work it free. The tires spun. She got out into the cold and looked at the angle and understood that she was not driving out before the temperature dropped further and someone with equipment came to help. She called the nearest tow service. 45 minutes, maybe an hour, they said, and the tone of the dispatcher suggested she shouldn't count on the shorter end. When she turned around, Cal Morrow was already coming down the lane on foot, moving without urgency, a pair of traction boards under one arm. "Saw it happen from the shed window," he said. He didn't say anything else about it. He positioned the boards, had her get back behind the wheel, and talked her through it, left, steady, don't accelerate hard, until the car came free and sat level on the lane again. She thanked him. He nodded once and was already pulling the boards back when his radio crackled and the weather alert came through. He looked at the sky. She looked at him looking at the sky. The clouds to the northwest were the color of iron. "That's not 45 minutes away," he said. "That's here inside 20. She called the tow service back. They confirmed it. Road closures on Route 9 beginning at 4. They weren't coming. He looked at her for a moment with the expression of a man calculating something practical. "Guest rooms made up," he said. "It's that or the car." It was not phrased as warmth. It was phrased as a fact. She appreciated that. She got her bag from the trunk and followed him back up the lane. The caretaker's apartment occupied the east wing of Halcyon House, 3 rooms that had originally been an artist's residency suite, converted with no fuss into something livable. A wood stove in the main room, already going. A kitchen that smelled of coffee and pine. On the table by the window, a child's drawing of a bird, half finished, with a yellow pencil resting across it. Elena was setting her bag down when the girl appeared from the hallway. She was 8, maybe 9. Dark eyes, her father's same unhurried way of taking stock. She was wearing a sweater with a small red stripe and carrying a paperback with a horse on the cover, and she regarded the stranger in her home the way a sensible child regards new information, gathering it before deciding anything. "This is Ren," Cal said. "She won't bother you." "Hi," Ren said. Then she went back down the hall. Elena ate dinner at their table, because there was nowhere else, and because Cal Morrow set a third place without asking and that somehow made it difficult to object. He made pasta from scratch, which she hadn't expected, pulling dough that he'd apparently had proofing in a covered bowl since that morning. He worked the way he walked through the building, without wasted motion, everything going where it was supposed to go. Ren came back for dinner with her book and ate with one hand and read with the other in the practiced way of a child who had done this at every meal for years. At one point she reached over without looking and moved the salt shaker closer to her father's hand before he'd reached for it, and he thanked her without looking either, and that small, automatic understanding between them was the most domestic thing Elena had witnessed in a long time. The conversation was light and unhurried. He asked nothing about her work. She found herself asking about his, about the building's history, the arts programs it had run, the chamber orchestra that had rehearsed in the main hall every Tuesday for 12 years until the county cut the arts budget, the residency that had housed 17 painters and sculptors over 2 decades before the holding company bought the deed. He answered with the same easy specificity he'd shown on the tour, and once or twice she caught something in his voice that wasn't quite nostalgia, more like the particular fluency of someone explaining a subject they had never stopped thinking about. He knew the building's history the way you know a person's history. From having been there for it. From having cared. After dinner, Ren washed her own plate without being told, said goodnight to Elena with the matter-of-fact courtesy of a child raised to treat guests properly, and went to bed. Cal poured 2 cups of coffee and sat back down, and Elena asked him, because she was a direct person and the question had been sitting in her chest for an hour, how long he'd been the caretaker. 7 years, he said. What did you do before? He looked at his cup. Not evasively, just the way a man looks at something he's decided to be honest about. Structural engineering, he said. Downtown firm. Burlington. She waited. My wife got sick, he said. Ren needed someone at home. This job kept me on the ridge and kept the lights on. He paused. It was the right call. He said it without bitterness, which was what she noticed most, not the sacrifice, which was plain enough, but the complete absence of grievance over it. As if the arithmetic had come out correct and he had no further argument with it. The storm hammered the roof and the wood stove ticked warmly, and outside the windows the ridge disappeared into white. Elena sat in a caretaker's kitchen in a building she had come to schedule for demolition and found herself unable, for the first time in recent memory, to think about what was next. She slept well, which surprised her. In the morning the storm had passed and the ridge was buried and brilliant. She came out early, before Ren was up, and Cal was already in the main hall of the building, checking the heating system along the east corridor. She followed the hall past the old gallery spaces, boards she'd noted yesterday, the good stone, the light, and found herself in the archive room at the back, where the building's records were kept in flat files and map drawers along one wall. She was looking for the utility shutoff diagram, which Cal had mentioned was in the 3rd drawer. She found it. And in the same drawer, rolled and tied with a piece of twine, she found something else, a set of structural drawings, full set, the kind that belonged in a county clerk's office or a job site trailer. She untied them out of habit and unrolled the top sheet on the table and smoothed the corners with her palms. The cover sheet. Project, Halcyon Community Arts Center, Ridgeline, Vermont. Structural Engineer of Record, C. Morrow, P.E. Date of issue, April 2017. His initials were stamped in the title block. His seal was in the corner, the raised impression of a licensed professional engineer, the kind you earn with years of graduate study and a board examination and 2 years of supervised practice before you are permitted to put your name on a structure and stand behind it. She turned to the next sheet, and the next. Every one. The load calculations in the margins were dense and precise, worked in a tidy, practiced hand she now recognized as the same hand that had left a yellow pencil on a child's drawing the night before. The stone facing he'd told her about on the tour, the repointing, the north wall exposure, it was all here, planned for, accounted for, before a single stone had been lifted. He hadn't just maintained this building for 7 years. He had made it exist. She stood there for a moment in the quiet of the archive room and felt the particular discomfort of a person who has been carrying a wrong assumption without knowing it. She heard the door to the hall open and Ren appeared in her coat, headed for the woodpile. The girl looked at the drawing spread on the table. She looked at Elena. Her expression was perfectly calm. He built it, you know, she said. He doesn't tell people. Then she went outside, and the door swung shut, and the room was quiet again. Elena looked at the drawings for a long time. The storm light came through the high window and lay across the pages, and she stood there with the title block under her hand and understood, with the clarity that sometimes only arrives in very still places, that she had been looking at this building wrong since the moment she turned into the lane. She rolled the drawings carefully and tied the twine back the way she'd found it. She put them in the third drawer and closed it. She did not say anything to Cal about what she'd found. She thanked him for the room, helped clear the walk to her car, and drove back down the lane with the road bare and the sky hard blue and her mind working at a different speed than it had worked on the drive up. The acquisition folder sat on the passenger seat the whole way home. She didn't open it. 6 weeks later, she called him. Not the office number she'd had from the firm's file, his personal number, which she'd taken down from the guest room's emergency card the night she stayed. She wasn't sure when she'd decided to use it instead. She wasn't sure she'd made a conscious decision at all. He answered on the third ring. She told him the demolition order had been pulled. She told him she'd been working with the County Preservation Board and a development group out of Montpelier that specialized in adaptive reuse, and that Halcyon House was going to be rescoped as a mixed-use restoration, community arts programming on the ground floor, residential units above, the stone facing and the roofline untouched. The structural drawings, she said, were going to the county clerk's office where they belonged, and the engineer of record's name was going on the plaque at the entrance. There was a pause on the line. "You didn't have to do all that," he said. "I know," she said. Another pause. She could hear, faintly, the sound of a child's voice somewhere in the background, Ren, asking something, the way children ask things when they can tell an adult is on an important call. "The caretaker position," Elena said. "Is it still yours if you want it?" "It is," he said. "Good." She paused. "I'm going to need someone who knows the building when the construction crews start. I'd like it to be you." "All right," he said. She had driven 4 hours north in January with a demolition timeline and come home with something she hadn't been looking for and couldn't quite name, the specific, unsettling feeling of a person who has narrowly avoided making an irreversible mistake and knows it. She spent 6 weeks doing the slower, harder work of fixing it. And when she drove back up the ridge in March, the snow was going soft at the edges and the lane was clear, and Ren was sitting on the front step with her horse book, and she looked up when Elena's car pulled in, and she didn't look surprised at all. She set the third cup on the kitchen table before Elena had taken off her coat. Some things, a sensible child understands long before the adults catch up.